Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and start recording these meetings to provide professional development opportunities for vistas if they want to go back and look through some of these things shared. It's not gonna go as long without people um, and their input, but we're gonna go ahead and get started because I still think it's valuable information. Um, Let me see. Um, okay, can you see my screen?
I cannot at the moment.
Okay, let me see. I'm learning technology. It's so
That's
fun.
okay.
Let's share this one. Woot. Okay. So I just put this, I think it worked that time. I just put this together as kind of like a guide through to help me as we're talking. So this month's topic is kind of how to navigate difficult conversations with your boss, as well as, well, not just your boss, but like people in the workplace. I always think of bosses because I feel like site supervisors are the ones sometimes where it's hard to communicate and advocate for yourself as a Vista. So that's where my mind goes to. But yeah, so this is basically like how to navigate conversations as you're in your site, because as we know, vistas have multiple hats, roles they have to fill. You have your TSP Vista side of things, as well as your um, community expectations roles that you have to fill. And sometimes it gets a little clouded, or sometimes you're like, that's not necessarily in my VAD, or whatever the reason is. And you have to have those hard conversations to advocate for yourself, but also do it in a peaceful manner so that you're still able to get things done. So I really like this quote. So I put it down. It says, like, difficult conversations come down to one thing, and that's your ability for you to separate your emotion about doing it from the things you actually need to talk about and the outcome you want to achieve. So something I've noticed when I'm having difficult conversations is the first thing that I feel like is really important is to not lose your emotions. Sometimes I'm personally like a heated person, so like I get very passionate about things, and if I lose control of my emotions, I feel like it's over from there. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I recognize in the past too, when I've had to have conversations like this, is I get really emotional really easily. Um, so it's I cry a lot. So that's definitely something that I deal with, like being very emotional and also being very like passionate, heated kind of a stance.
I think it's just because, like, honestly, girl, I'm the same way. Okay, like I cry. It's kind of awkward sometimes, but I feel like careers like these tend to attract people that are very passionate, and we care about other people and we want to serve other people. And so I feel like, it's natural to get very passionate about things. Um, but and that's another point that, like, uh I'll end up probably saying later, but is I feel like it's important to remember that um, we as individuals tend to, we kind of cast people when there's conflict, right? We naturally create these schemas in our head where they're the bad guy because they cut us off, like when we're driving or whatever. They're the bad guy, I'm the good guy. And we create these stories in our head. Um, but it's important, like when you're talking to someone, to realize, or at least I try to do this, that deep down, I believe everybody truly wants what's best for whatever the situation is. Um, for example, this is what I think about is like politics, right? And I'm not gonna go into specifics, but like um, I have many friends that have different opposing political views than me, and I always end up having to think, I'm like, I can't get like upset about it because I truly believe that everybody deep down wants what's best for America. Nobody truly wants like America to burn or things like that. We just see differently of how we feel like we can make America a better place. That's kind of the example I can think of. And I think it's the same way with like conversations. Okay, so just to hear a little bit from you, because you're the only one here, um, what attracted you to this discussion? Is there something specific that you want to get out of this? What are you hoping to get out of this?
I don't think I actually knew like the topic
Okay.
beforehand, but was really interested to just like kind of sit down and have these more like professional or like development kind of discussions just for like personal reasons of like just wanting to be a better person and having
Okay.
a better just like having things in my personal toolbox, I guess, of like how to manage situations as I'm like coming into more professional job positions.
Awesome. And so I feel like this is always a good stepping stone for you to get where you want to be eventually. What do you want to do eventually, Sienna?
I think I'm still figuring that out. Um, but I definitely want to work in, I think the idea right now is like outdoor program management. So being able to be in a position where I can provide like trusting leadership and manage other people and put them in like a safe environment.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Cool. Um, yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. If you have any, I'm really grateful you're here, Sienna, because otherwise it'd just be me talking to myself, recording for like 10 minutes because they go really short when you're by yourself. But yeah, if you have any thoughts as we're going through this, like feel free to share. Okay. So I want you to kind of think of a time when maybe you had a crucial conversation. What in your experience went well and what didn't go so well?
Yeah, I had to have there's kind of two that come to mind. I'd have a conversation with my site supervisor like a week ago. Just trying to like hold the boundary of like I'm not supposed to be doing a lot of direct service and I'm kind of scheduled right now to be doing a lot of direct service. So felt like that conversation went really well because she'd also served like a Vista term before, so knew like what that all meant and what I needed to do and felt like I approached it in a way that was very respectful. Like I'm not trying to, give my responsibilities to anyone else, but trying to hold that boundary of like this isn't the work I'm supposed to be doing. And I just want to be really upfront with you about that. And she was like super understanding and seemed like glad that I had that conversation with her. Maybe not glad because we need the help, but like was very respectful and in me like holding that boundary. Um, and then for one that doesn't go so well, it's kind of like the first conversation I thought of like, oh, I get really emotional. Is I used to work at the Girl Scout camp in like one of the Girl Scout camps in Utah and didn't have the best relationship with my like supervisor there and had a group of girls one week that were talking a lot about like self-harm and some really like serious kind of adult subjects that I didn't know how to handle and were really like affecting me on a personal level and like went to my supervisor to try and get some support there and was just like really overwhelmed and was like kind of started crying and just couldn't compose myself and it really freaked her out because she was like I don't get why you're crying. I don't know how to like handle this right now and it really like the conversation just didn't go really well because we weren't really connecting on that level of like she didn't understand why it was so hard for me and I didn't understand why she couldn't have been empathetic with me a little bit. So kind of different scenarios, but
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. I really like what you said about empathy at the end because I feel like because in my experience, or just even reading a lot lately to get ready to talk about this subject, I feel like the key to one of the keys also to having these conversations is we need to remember to have empathy. And I think that goes hand in hand, like we said earlier, about like not losing your emotions, um, but just try to really seek to understand where the other person is coming from. Because there is there's this thing they talk a lot about in like I don't know if you're into psychology at all or like counseling.
Yeah, a
Oh,
little bit.
good, awesome, cool. There's this thing they talk about a lot in when I was in my undergrad about active listening in like counseling and when you're communicating to people. And I feel like that's a skill that a lot of people we don't know how to use nowadays. Is as far as like actively listening for the intended message. People will often say one thing, but their body language and the inflection of their voice is actually saying a completely different thing. And if we are not like in tune or being empathetic in the moment and ready to receive that message, we won't. So yeah, I really like that. And thank you for sharing that. I think you made some great points. um, okay, so when I am getting ready to have a tough conversation with someone, I try to follow these four main techniques. Which the first one is acknowledge your responsibility. Two is define the outcome. Listen and validate the other individual. And also, four, restate the desired outcome. Always go back to that um, outcome that you want to achieve from that conversation. And yeah, we'll get to it at the end, but sometimes, you get to a point where you can try all these techniques, and I think these techniques work really good when you're getting ready to go in and be prepared. But there will be once in a while there'll be personalities that come into the situation that we can't control because there's different personalities, and sometimes everything we did just isn't enough. And we have some resources to go over, especially in the roles you are now, of what you can do when you get in that situation. So, going into the steps a little bit more, um, acknowledging your responsibility. So, when there's something interesting that happens when you go into these situations, like maybe you're having a not a confrontation, but like resentful feelings. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a scenario. Resentful feelings towards maybe a fellow worker who's supposed to um, collect donations or work on a certain project just with you, and you're the only one doing all the work. So, um, the first thing when you go into that is make sure you accept responsibility for your part in that. So it could be like, you know what, I'm sorry, I haven't been as good at communicating to you as I should have been, or expressing my feelings, whatever the reason is, find something, but be genuine about it that you're willing to take responsibility for. Because when we take responsibility for our part in a conflict or whatever the situation may be, it automatically de-escalates the situation by putting the person, because when I can't find words right now. I hope you get what I'm saying. But like um people are naturally always on the defense. And so when we take responsibility for that, it automatically just it shuts down, and they won't they're less defensive than they would be when they hear that communication. Um I like this one person that talks about critical conversations, and she even mentioned this, and I wrote it down. And all of some of these slides that we're going through, I'm going to post on social media. So if you want to go back and reference some of the quotes or whatever, but she talks about how you're also honoring the other person, and you're making a much more even playing field for getting ready to have that conversation. So it doesn't really feel like one-sided or you're like bombarding somebody. You're evening the playing field, and when they feel like they're being honored and that it's a mutual thing, they're more receptive to being able to listen to that, to whatever you have to tell them, the feedback or whatever, right? Because I feel like when someone comes at me, I'm very defensive. I need to work on not being so defensive. Um, but I'm always on the defense. But when somebody like comes in like that, like I'm more receptive and ready to accept that. Does that make sense? I feel like I went everywhere with that.
No, no,
Okay,
it makes sense.
okay, good, good. So then the next step is you want to define the outcome. And sometimes this is something that you definitely want to plan before you go into the conversation. Is like, because when you go into a conversation, right, there, even though we try to get a hold of our emotions and not lose control, because it's like a roller coaster, um, we want to make sure we have that defined outcome that we can keep going back to because it stabilizes the conversation. Um, and you want to, yeah, you want to define it. Sorry, I keep losing my thoughts. I'm tired.
It's okay. It's that
But you
like
want to define that.
post-lunch slump a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I need my caffeine. Um, but yeah, you want to define that before you go into it because if you don't have that defined, then the conversation's gonna be like a roller coaster, right? It's just gonna go every which way, and you'll end up being more frustrated at the end, not knowing what you accomplished. So I think it's important to, and I think that helps you not lose your emotions also, because I'm just thinking like if you think, okay, I want to come out of this having a less heavy workload, or I want to come out of this like having less direct services on my plate, right? Whatever it is. Um, then just like remember that and go into that. So then it's like, look, this is the goal of, PSP is I want to help, whatever that that outcome is that you want to achieve. Um, I was talking to someone once that they said sometimes it could be beneficial to kind of figure out that outcome with the other person during the conversation. Um, I think it depends on the context. I wouldn't advise it personally, but depending on the situation and I guess how close you are to the person, maybe for the most part, like I said, I think it's best to always have that in mind before you go into it. Um, I think sometimes people will get caught in the loop of like writing a script or whatever. Um, I wouldn't do that. I think it's important to have like key points of what you want to cover, but definitely don't like rehearse it where you have a script verbatim because obviously the other person doesn't know what their lines are when you go to have this conversation and it's not going to go the way you thought it would. So definitely don't do that. So the third step or the third technique that I use is make sure you listen, right? We talked about that active listening and you validate people. Because when you validate people, it's just like that whole taking responsibility for your part in the conflict or whatever it is. Um, it shows the other person you're hearing where they're coming from. But like I said at the beginning, be genuine about it. I feel like people genuinely know when you're bullshitting them. And so don't just like say stuff to get away with. Find something, even if it's small, to be genuine and sincere about. Whenever you're like being empathetic, when you're validating, when you're apologizing for your part, whatever it is, find something that you feel sincere about. Um, and this goes hand in hand, like I said, when you validate someone, it helps tear down their defenses. Um, they're more open to listening and communicating with you. Um, so right, a conversation goes back and forth. like you'll say your part and then they'll come back, well, like I feel like you've just been ignoring me a lot lately, or I don't feel like you've been focusing on this project as much as your other projects. You know, you can validate that by, wow, I'm sorry you feel that way. Um, Actually, don't say that. I went to a seminar once that said, never say I'm sorry you feel that way. They said that puts that back on the other person. I need to get out of that habit though, man. Like,
Yeah, it's a tough one.
yeah, so I'm trying to think, what could you say for that? I'm sorry, I put you I'm sorry I haven't been as um well at seeing what your needs are. I don't know. What do you think, Sienna?
Yeah, I've done, maybe not done, I haven't had a lot of these conversations, but we've like practiced them before. And it's like making sure that you're taking responsibility and not putting it back on that person. So even if it's like, oh, I'm sorry I made you feel that way, or I'm sorry I haven't been as available, or like just taking that accountability on yourself. Cause like being on the other side of that before, I'm like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm like, well, it's not that I just feel that way. It's like this is something that like you've done that made me feel like this. So yeah, like finding a way to, even if like, I don't think people genuinely want to cause like ill will or like want to ignore you, but it's like, oh, I didn't recognize I was doing that. Let me take ownership for that and just like, yeah,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
that's good.
I think it's
Yeah,
contextual too, and like what the situation is, like how you address it. But
yeah, definitely. And really, all of this is very contextual. Um, but yeah, like just validating the other person's feelings and why they think that way. I think maybe one is like, wow, like I hear what you're saying, or like that would probably be a good way to word it. I tend to say validate a lot. So I always say like, wow, just so you know, like I'm totally validating what you're saying and I had no idea, or something like that. But yeah, when we validate people through the conversation, like I said, it helps keep that even playing field and helps these techniques really are all to help keep the conversation stabilized and even, and if you follow them like the best you can, I promise, like emotions shouldn't get all off topic. I think about this because so before I came to Vista, I was working as a school counselor at an alternative school, and the principal and I had a little bit of an altercation, um, where like she kind of blew up on me for something that like didn't seem like a big deal, and that's okay. So I like wrote her a letter, right? And I put in the letter like specific things of oh why I feel like this needs to happen in the school, and that but I'm here and I believe in this school. I want to make it a better place and I'm here for her also. And she took the letter, which was really weird, like, because I thought it was very genuine, but she took the letter very offensive. She felt like I was attacking her, and she pulled me into her office, and she's like, this was very attacking. I'm not okay. Like, and she starts like coming at me, like it was very aggressive. And honestly, like, yes, I'm a passionate person, but I don't like conflict. You know what I mean? Like if something fires me off up, like I'm not afraid to engage in it if I feel like there's an injustice. But I don't I'm not a person but that particularly like seeks out opportunities to fight. I don't like debating. Especially because like confrontate confrontation, sorry, words are hard. um it like gives me anxiety and I like feel it kind of like in my chest. And so when this was all coming at me, I was like, oh my gosh. And so what was like one of the first skills I did is I validated and I just listened to what she had to say. And at this point, like unfortunately, like there were a lot of things that went on that I was kind of like planning on leaving anyways. But I did notice that when I'm like, wow, that is not how I meant it. I'm so sorry, Um, like, and just validated her feelings. She did, like, she automatically like came down, and it was kind of weird because I'm like, are you not gonna keep attacking me? So it is cool to see, and she was a very like fighting personality, so it was kind of it's cool to watch. And so definitely use that technique if you're ever in that situation. Um, yeah, it helps. Okay, so and then the fourth step, I didn't really get into it a whole lot or make a full slide for it because, like I said, it's just remembering to continue to restate that desired outcome. Keep going back to it no matter where the conversation goes. Usually, like, you state that desired outcome in the first like sentence when you're talking to somebody, right? You're like, this is what I'm hoping to achieve. So make sure on that roller coaster of emotions and conversation, wherever it goes, that you keep going back to that desired outcome so that it will actually help you start making headway to progress. And then when in doubt, if all else fails and you've tried everything you can, because I have had these situations, at least being a Vista, because this is like my fourth year being a Vista. I don't know if I told you that in OSA or anything like that. But I did work for PSP like 3 years ago was my first year or something like that. No, 4 years ago. I don't. It doesn't matter. But during that time, um, with one of my site supervisors, kind of like what you said as far as direct services and indirect services, we were doing too many like direct services. And I had a co-vista with me at the time, and she's like, this isn't really what we're supposed to do. um, and we felt like it was during the COVID time too, right? So like everybody started acting really crazy at the beginning of COVID. Um, they like I'm a psych major, or I was. I'm not a psych major anymore. I have my master's, but um, something I've learned about psychology is when people are uncertain about things, they tend to get uh, they tend to try and grab control on whatever they could. So my site supervisor, who was actually normally a very laid back person, um, when COVID hit, there were so many things happening at the school, like changing hours wise and students and stuff that she really like started tightening her grip on what we were doing. And like, yeah, it was a little crazy, like making sure we accounted every hour and stuff. She did not want us to work from home. I mean, it's fine. But like I said, there were things like that that were happening, and sometimes, you know, uh, sorry, I feel like my thoughts go off on one place, and then I'm like, wait, how does that connect? But it does. Um, but sometimes, the conversation that you can have with them, because like I remember me and my co-vista would go on and we'd like say, well, this is what we're kind of hoping to accomplish, and she'd be like, no. It's like, well, this is what Vista is supposed to do, and she'd be like, well, that's not the email I got, and stuff like that. Like it was fine, right? People are just funny during COVID. I still think they're amazing people. I think COVID
Hmm.
just made them funny. Um, but it's good to remember the reason why I wanted to show this is it's good to remember like you have Vista leaders, right? Which I didn't take advantage of my Vista leaders at the time, but you have Vista leaders that are like your liaisons that they're there to be your mentors and help guide you, and they're a great sounding board to help you get through your problems because we were regular Vistas just like you. I mean, we're still Vistas, but just on a different area or different level. I don't know. But I definitely am here if you ever want to talk to me, and I know Maya is. Um, but one that I did take advantage of when I was in that whole situation was I reached out to Shauna a lot. And so we have Aubrey and Shauna here at the PSP office. And like I said, they're a great resource where when it hits a point where you feel like these techniques and the conversation you're having or trying to have with your leader isn't working, and you, no matter how hard you try in a peaceful manner, you're not getting the outcome that you need. um, Aubrey and Shauna are great people to reach out to try and advocate for you, at least from the Vista side of things. Um, because I know every community site has different, um, they have different like needs and different responsibilities that they require of you. And sometimes, at least me being a school-based Vista, it felt like what the school needed and what PSP wanted me to do were two different things. Um, so that's why I say, like, when you hit that point, like, reach out to Shauna and Aubrey if it gets so bad, that they will come in and they're not going to be aggressive about it, but it sometimes helps to have that middleman who's not necessarily directly at your site, um, to one, have an outside perspective of what could be going on, but two, also if there needs to be something advocated for you, they'll be in your corner to advocate for you. So, where I pulled some of my information for today, if you want some additional resources, is Crucial Conversations. It's a really good book. It's got a lot of key points in it on how to navigate those tough conversations. Um, Also, Mel Robbins, she's that motivational speaker on YouTube. If you want to check her out, she has a lot of other great just professional development things to share in general. She's awesome. And then, so the takeaways, which I don't know if I necessarily hit these because I kind of like just went everywhere. So I'm sorry, Sienna. But always start with the heart, right? That's where empathy comes from, is make sure that when you're going into it, you're not going into a conversation from an anger place or just like really anxious or emotional place, right? Go in because you truly have a desire to make whatever the situation is better than it was before. Um, Make it safe for both of you guys by creating an even playing field, right? Because we talked about um, take responsibility for what you've done. Don't let your emotions get the better of you. Accept responsibility for your part. Make sure you validate the other person, and when in doubt, get help. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. And then the quality of your life comes out of the quality of your dialogues and conversations. And that's pretty much all I had. Is there any questions you specifically have, Sienna, that um, we can talk about or need addressed?
Nothing that I can think of immediately, but it's just nice to have that reiterated that we can come to like our Vista leaders or come to Aubrey and Shauna if we need that extra support. Because I definitely I worked with my site over the summer as well. So I did a summer associate position before my Vista. So I feel um like really fortunate to kind of have already built a relationship with my site supervisor and feel very like heard and supported and validated by her. But it is always nice to know that like we have backup if we need it and that we're supported in the work that we do. So
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that comment. And then just like maybe before closing, because I'm still learning how to do these discussions, do you have any feedback for me of how I can make these better or more relevant or more helpful for you guys? Like what could be improved or what was great?
I mean, I kind of, it's my first conversation, but it's nice that like even on Zoom we can still like physically see each other. I know it's like I did my last like year and a half of college on Zoom. I'm a Zoom university student, so it's just nice being able to actually like see people and feel like you're having a conversation. So I appreciate that you have your camera on. Um, and maybe if you can share the slides like after our discussion or beforehand, so like there might be time to kind of like look through it before a conversation if we have any like questions um like if we know the info beforehand, we can think of some questions, or if we have the info afterhand too, then we can like reference material and have that as a resource too. Because I know I will like come to a conversation and try and remember a lot, but my brain can only hold so much. So it's nice to be able to go back and kind of look at the slides or have the recordings and be able to just like reference that material.
No, I like that. That's a good idea. I made a note of that, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um, okay. And I had a last thought, but then it left my brain as I was writing down your comment. Isn't that how it
Happens
goes?
to me too.
Um, yes. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna record these and then I'm just gonna say this for whoever's gonna end up watching this later. If you have any great feedback that you would like to give me, please send it to me in an email of how I can be more helpful with these monthly discussions. I keep saying weekly, they're monthly, of how I can make them better. Maya and let me know. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna stop the recording if I can figure it out.